Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist, Learn Languages, Make a Difference. My name is Dr. Carlos Sierra Lopez, and we're here today to talk about if clauses in the conditional or cláusulas con sí. Now, before we get started, just let me clarify that if clauses or cláusulas condicionales con sí are just a specific aspect of the conditional verbal tense, which some call the conditional mood. We can obviously express the conditional without resorting to if clauses or cláusulas con sí. We can say, for instance, I would like to go to the beach. Me gustaría ir a la playa. And in that conditional sentence, I did not need to use any if clause or cláusula con sí whatsoever. Now, having said that, let's delve into the specificities of the cláusulas condicionales con sí. Now, first of all, both in Spanish and in English, conditional sentences have two clauses. A conditional clause with sí in Spanish or if in English. Now, notice that this sí, unlike the equivalent of yes, does not have an accent because it's a conditional if rather than an adverb of affirmation as in yes, in which case it does have an accent. So two parts, the cláusula condicional con sí, the if clause, and then the main clause, which does not feature sí or if. Now, it's important to notice that the conditional clause with if or sí can be at the beginning or at the end of the sentence. Now, if it's at the beginning of the sentence, then we need to write the if clause, comma, and then the main clause. As in, si no tuviera tarea, iría al cine. If I didn't have any homework to do, then I would go to the cinema. To mark that then, that transition between the if clause and the main clause, we write a comma. However, if you write the main clause before the if clause, then you do not write any commas. As in, iría al cine si no tuviera tarea. We can see that the content of the sentence is exactly the same, minus the comma between both clauses. Now that we know the basics, let us see how to use these clauses. And we'll begin with general facts or situations that are very likely. How do we express this? Well, we can do it in two different ways. The first one is this. We can use sí plus presente indicativo and then presente indicativo in the main clause. As in, si llueve, las calles se mojan. If it rains, the streets get wet, get soaked. Or vice versa, presente indicativo and then sí plus presente indicativo. Now remember, if you put the main clause before the if clause, then you remove the comma. So now it would be las calles se mojan si llueve without any comma. The second possibility to express general facts or situations that are very likely is as follows. We use the presente indicativo in the if clause and then the future simple in the main clause. So we say, si hace buen tiempo, saldré a pasear. If the weather is nice, then I will go for a walk. Or vice versa, futuro simple and then the if clause with presente indicativo without commas. So, saldré a pasear si hace buen tiempo. I will go for a walk if the weather is nice. Now, let's suppose that we want to talk about habits in the past. Well, in that case, we use the following structure. We use the if plus imperfecto indicativo, and then in the main clause, again, imperfecto de indicativo. So it will be as follows. Say, for instance, when I was a kid, well, in that context, you can say, si nevaba, salía a jugar. If it snowed, then I will go out to play. If it snowed, then I used to go out to play with the snow, or vice versa. First, imperfecto de indicativo in the main clause, and then the if clause, again with imperfecto de indicativo, but this time without commas. So again, when I was a kid, because that context indicates a habit in the past, salía a jugar si nevaba. So I went out to play if it snowed. Now let's suppose we want to express a hypothesis that is either impossible or highly unlikely. Now in that case, we need to resort to the subjunctive. So we're going to adopt this structure. We're going to say, si, we're going to use an if clause in imperfecto de subjuntivo, and then the main clause in condicional simple, as in, si ganara la lotería, me compraría una casa más grande. If I won the lottery, I would buy a bigger house, or vice versa without a comma. Condicional simple, indicativo for the main clause, and then si plus imperfecto de subjuntivo, as in, me compraría una casa más grande si ganara la lotería. I would buy a bigger house if I won the lottery. Now, it is highly unlikely that I will win the lottery, and that's why we're using this structure. And finally, we have a different kind of hypothesis, which is a hypothesis where the condition is not real and the result is likely. And for that purpose, we use si plus pluscuamperfecto de subjuntivo in the if clause, and then for the main clause, condicional compuesto in the indicative mood. And so it will be something like this. Si hubiera tenido más dinero para ir de vacaciones el pasado verano, habría viajado a Londres. So if I had more money to go on a vacation last summer, I would have traveled to London. So we can see that the condition is not real. It is not the case that I did have more money than the money I had last summer. So the condition is not real, but the result is likely. It is the case that if I had that money, then I would have probably traveled to London. And we can use this structure also beginning with the main clause in condicional compuesto and then the if clause in pluscuamperfecto de subjuntivo minus the comma. So it will be something like this. Habría viajado a Londres si hubiera tenido más dinero para ir de vacaciones el pasado verano. I would have traveled to London if I had more money to go on a vacation last summer. And you can use this for any other number of examples where something in the past cannot be changed anymore, but something will have been likely the case if that condition had been met. For instance, if I had been Michael Jordan, I would have played basketball really well. Si hubiera sido Michael Jordan, which is impossible, I cannot go back to the past and be born as Michael Jordan, habría jugado realmente bien al baloncesto. And so that's really all. These are the 5 types of conditional clauses with if in Spanish. I hope both the usos and formas are clear, but if you have any questions or doubts, please let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, thanks for watching.